Mama, everything is going to be fine. Eat first and then I'll help you cross the road.
Thank you.
They warned him to ignore her. A blind woman with torn clothes and an empty bowl was not his responsibility, but he helped her anyway, guiding her through traffic, feeding her, and speaking to her like she mattered. What he didn't know was that the poor woman he helped was married to the wealthiest man in town, and by the time the truth surfaced, his small kindness would return as a life-altering reward. The sun had not yet climbed high when Kola stepped out of his one-room apartment and locked it with a key that had grown thin from too many anxious mornings. His shirt was clean but tired, like a soldier that had fought too many battles in the same uniform. He adjusted the strap of his small brown bag, checked his pocket for the last of his transport money, and began walking toward the main road, where the city's noise was already waking up like a drum being beaten from far away. Kola was not a lazy man. He was a man who had learned early that hunger does not respect excuses. His father had died before he finished school, and his mother's small provisions shop had collapsed after a fire that nobody investigated, and the family had scattered like frightened birds. So Kola became his own elder, his own father, his own comfort. He took jobs that came and went, loading trucks at night, running errands for shop owners, cleaning offices when the real workers had gone home. He was the kind of young man people like to call hard-working, but in truth, hard work was not his special gift. Survival was. That morning, his survival had a deadline. He had been told to come for an interview at a new logistics company, small but growing fast, an opportunity that could change the direction of his life if only he arrived on time and spoke well. And now, as he hurried toward the bus stop, his heart kept whispering the same warning. Do not allow anything to delay you today. The road was busy already. Keka drivers shouted, buses coughed smoke, vendors balanced trays and called out prices like praise singers at a festival. And then, near the edge of the pedestrian crossing, Kola saw her. At first, he only noticed the torn clothes, the kind that looked like they had been washed too many times without mercy. Then he noticed the bowl in her hands, and then, as he came closer, he saw her eyes. They were open, but they did not hold the world. They were the eyes of someone whose sight had left long ago. The woman stood slightly away from the rush, as if she feared the speed of the city. Her headscarf was faded, her wrapper was frayed at the hem, her feet were bare, and her bowl was empty in a way that felt louder than hunger. Kola slowed down without meaning to. A man beside him clicked his tongue and muttered, "Young man, don't stop there." A woman carrying oranges hissed, "If you start helping everyone, you will miss your destiny." Another voice, older, sharper, added, "Blind beggars are many, they will finish your pocket." Kola tried to keep walking. He tried to remember his interview. He tried to remember the thin money in his pocket. But then the blind woman lifted her bowl slightly and spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, just like a human being who was tired of being invisible. "Please," she said softly, "someone help me cross." Her voice had no begging performance in it, no exaggerated crying, no fake curse, just a request, simple and bare. And something in that simplicity struck Kola the way a small stone strikes a tin roof, quiet but unforgettable. Kola stopped. His feet refused to move. He looked at the road again, at the rushing cars, at the angry drivers, and then at her trembling hands. And he saw something else, too. He saw fear. Not the fear of hunger, the fear of being crushed and forgotten. Kola swallowed. He checked his wrist as if he wore a watch, even though his wrist was naked. Time was moving. His chance was waiting. But the woman was standing at the edge of danger. Kola stepped closer. "Mama," he said gently, "hold my arm."
The voices around him complained immediately. "Ah, see him! Small boy, you want to be a hero. You will regret it." But Kola did not answer them. He offered his elbow, and the blind woman's fingers, thin, careful, found him like someone searching for land in deep water. Her grip was light, but it carried trust. and trust in this world is a heavy thing. Kola guided her to the crossing. He waited for the right moment. A bus horn blared and his heart jumped, but he did not let go. When the traffic slowed, he stepped forward, leading her one careful pace at a time. Drivers shouted, some cursed. One keke driver laughed and said, "Blind woman, you will make young man miss job." Kola ignored him. He kept walking. And when they reached the other side, the blind woman exhaled like someone who had been holding her breath for years. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. Kola tried to step away quickly to reclaim his time, but then he noticed something. Her bowl was empty, not low, empty, and her stomach made a sound that was small but honest. Kola hesitated. He looked down at his pocket again, calculating the way poor people calculate, carefully, painfully, with the fear of mistake. He had money for transport and perhaps a small snack before the interview. If he gave her anything, he might have to trek a long distance and arrive sweaty, late, embarrassed. But as he looked at her face, he saw something that did not fit her clothes. Dignity. Even with torn wrapper, she stood with dignity. Even with empty bowl, she held herself like someone who had not forgotten her value. Kola's throat tightened. "Mama," he asked softly, "have you eaten today?" The blind woman paused. In that pause, Kola heard the truth without words. "No," she admitted quietly, "I have not." Kola turned toward a nearby food cellar. The smell of akara and pop floated in the air like comfort. He reached into his pocket, pulled out some notes, and bought a portion. The seller raised her eyebrows. "Ah, young man," she said, "you are kind. May your pocket never run dry." Kola carried the food to the blind woman. He guided her to sit on a low bench beside the stall. He placed the warm food in her hands. At first she hesitated, as if she feared it was a trick, but when she touched the warmth, her lips trembled slightly. "God bless you," she whispered. Kola tried to smile, but his mind was already shouting at him, "Move! Time is going!" He stood up quickly. "I have to go," he said. "Take care, Mama." But as he turned, the blind woman reached out again and caught his wrist, just enough to stop him. "My son, what is your name?" "Kola," he answered. "And where are you going with such hurried feet?" Kola sighed. "To an interview," he said. "If I miss it, I may not get another chance." The blind woman nodded slowly, as if she could see his future without seeing his face. "Then may the road favor you. May the door open when you knock." Kola pulled his wrist gently free, nodded once, and hurried away. He ran to the bus stop. He waited, sweating. He boarded a bus that was too full. He stood squeezed between strangers. His shirt began to cling to his back. His heart pounded with every minute. When he finally arrived near the company, he jumped down and ran again. He reached the gate, breathless. A security man looked at him with disgust. "Where are you running from like thief?" the man snapped. "I'm here for the interview," Kola gasped. The security man checked his list, nodded reluctantly, and pointed him inside. Kola adjusted his shirt, wiped his face with a handkerchief that had seen better days, and entered the waiting area. Other candidates sat there with shiny shoes, neat suits, and the confidence of people who had backup plans. Kola sat quietly, trying not to look like someone who had fought traffic, hunger, and poverty before breakfast. His name was called. He stood. He walked into the interview room. The panel asked questions. Kola answered as best as he could. He spoke of experience, of discipline, of reliability. But he could feel it, the way the interviewer's eyes moved over him, measuring him like market goods. Not everyone in power knows how to hide their judgment. Kola finished, thanked them, and left. Outside, the sun was higher now. He walked slowly, no longer running, because whether he ran or not, the interview was done, and his pocket was lighter. He took a bus back toward his side of town. As the city moved around him, Kola's mind returned to the blind woman. He wondered if she was still sitting there.
He wondered if she had been safe. He wondered why, in a city full of people, her request had fallen on so many deaf ears. That thought stayed with him like smoke in cloth. Days passed. Kola continued his small jobs while waiting for a response from the company. Each day he checked his phone, hoping to see a message that would change everything. But hope, when it keeps being delayed, begins to feel like foolishness. One afternoon, as Kola carried a bag of items for a shop owner, he heard shouting near the market road. A crowd had gathered. Voices rose like storm winds. Curiosity pulled him closer. At the center of the crowd, he saw the blind woman again. But this time, she was not standing quietly. She was on the ground. Her bowl had spilled. Her food had fallen into dust. And a woman in a bright head tie was yelling at her. "You blind people are wicked," the woman shouted. "You purposely poured it. You want to disgrace me." The blind woman's hands shook as she tried to gather her things. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Shut up," the woman screamed. "You will pay me back." A man nearby added, "These beggars are becoming too bold." Another voice said, "Drive her away." Kola felt heat rise in his chest. He pushed forward. "Stop," he said loudly. The shouting woman turned. "And who are you?" she barked. Kola stepped closer. "I saw what happened. She didn't pour your food. Someone bumped her." A few people murmured. Some avoided his eyes. Because many people saw the truth, but they feared inconvenience. The shouting woman scoffed. "So you are her lawyer," she snapped. Kola bent down, helped the blind woman sit up, and picked up her bowl. He dusted her wrapper gently, like someone dusting a mother's dignity. Then he turned to the food seller. "How much was it?" he asked. The seller hesitated. She looked at Kola's worn clothes. She could tell he was not rich, but she named the price anyway. Kola sighed, reached into his pocket, and paid. The shouting woman stared, suddenly embarrassed. "Next time, watch where you are going," she muttered, and walked away, dragging her pride behind her. Kola helped the blind woman stand. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. The woman shook her head. "No," she said, "only tired." Kola guided her away from the crowd. He found a shaded spot near a quiet wall. He helped her sit. He bought water. He placed it in her hands. The blind woman drank slowly, like someone drinking peace. Then she turned her face toward him. "My son," she said gently, "you have helped me twice." Kola swallowed. "It is nothing," he said quickly. But the blind woman's expression changed slightly, as if she could hear the lie. "It is something," she corrected. "In this world, small kindness is not small, it is rare." Kola looked away. He did not know what to say. He only knew that each time he helped her, something inside him felt clean, even though his pocket felt empty. He wanted to ask her where she lived. He wanted to ask who cared for her. But in this city, questions can open problems, and Kola already had enough problems. So he stood. "I have to go," he said again. The blind woman nodded. Before he left, she lifted her hand as if to touch his face, but her fingers only found the air. Then she smiled, small, private. "May your name be mentioned for good, even in places you have never entered." Kola left, troubled by those words. Mentioned for good? In what places? He shook it off and continued his hustle. Another week passed. No message, no call. Kola began to accept that perhaps he had not been chosen. Perhaps the world had decided again that he was not worth investment. One evening, a friend named Seyi called him. "Kola, are you at home?" "Yes," Kola answered. "Why?" "Wear your best clothes," Seyi said. "Someone is looking for you." Kola frowned. "Who?" "I don't know," Seyi replied, excitement thick in his voice. "But a big car came to the neighborhood asking for you by name. They said they will return in 1 hour. Kola's heart stumbled. A big car asking for him in his poor street?
Kola's first thought was fear. Had he offended someone? Had there been a mistake? He looked around his small room, his plastic chair, his thin mattress, his cracked mirror. He found his best shirt and trousers. He wore them. He tried to comb his hair. He tried to calm his breathing. Outside, neighbors gathered. They whispered.
They stared at him like a sudden story. Then the car arrived, black, shiny, quiet like authority. Two men stepped out, dressed in neat suits with the posture of people who were used to being obeyed. One of them approached Kola. "Good evening," he said politely. "Are you Kolawole Adeyemi?" Kola nodded slowly. "Yes." "We are here to escort you," the man said. "Escort me?" Kola repeated, confused. "Yes," the man said. "You are requested at the Sterling Estate." Kola blinked. Sterling Estate. Everyone knew Sterling Estate. It was the home of Chief Marcus Sterling, the wealthiest man in town, the man whose name sat on buildings, whose money moved like wind. Kola felt his mouth go dry. "Why?" he asked. The man did not explain. "Please come," he said simply. Neighbors gasped. Sei's eyes widened. Someone whispered, "Kola has entered big trouble." Another whispered, "Or big blessing." Kola climbed into the car like a man entering a dream he did not understand. The vehicle moved through the city, leaving his familiar streets behind. They entered a part of town where the roads were smooth, where street lights looked brighter, where even the air seemed more expensive. Finally, they approached large gates. Security opened them quickly. The car rolled into a compound that looked like a small kingdom, flowers arranged like decoration for a royal wedding, fountains singing softly, walls tall enough to hide secrets. Kola's heart hammered. He was led into a grand sitting room. Everything smelled clean, everything shone, even the silence felt powerful. Then a man entered. He was tall, older, with a calm face that carried authority the way a lion carries its mane. His outfit was simple, but expensive. His eyes were sharp. This was Chief Marcus Sterling. Kola's legs almost forgot how to stand. He bowed slightly out of instinct. "Good evening, sir," he said. The chief studied him. "You are Kola?" he said. "Yes, sir." There was a pause, a heavy one. Then the chief spoke again. "They say you helped my wife." Kola froze. Your wife?" The chief's eyes remained steady. "My wife," he repeated. "A blind woman." Kola's breath caught. His mind raced backward, torn clothes, empty bowl, trembling hands, a quiet voice asking to cross the road. That woman? A wife? Of this man? Kola's world tilted. "Sir," Kola stammered, I didn't know." The chief lifted a hand, stopping him. "I know you didn't," he said calmly. "That is why I am speaking to you." He turned slightly, and a door opened. A woman entered, guided gently by a housemaid. Her wrapper was no longer torn. Her headscarf was no longer faded. She wore clean, elegant clothing. But her eyes were the same, open and still not holding the world. Yet her face held that same dignity. Kola's chest tightened. It was her, the blind woman. She smiled as she stepped forward. "Kola," she said softly, her voice warm. Kola could barely speak. "Mama," he whispered. The chief watched their exchange like a man watching a judge deliver a verdict. Then the chief spoke. "My wife's name is Mrs. Ijeoma Sterling. Before she lost her sight, she was the kind of woman who walked freely among people. But after her accident, she became quiet." Kola stood still, listening like a student before an elder. The chief continued. "For months," he said, "she has been asking me the same question. Do people still see me as human or only as burden?"
Kola felt shame creep into him for the entire town. The chief's jaw tightened slightly. "So," he said, "she asked for permission to go out alone, without revealing who she is. She said she wanted to know what life feels like for those who have nothing." Kola's eyes widened. The chief looked away for a moment, as if remembering a pain. "She wanted truth," he said quietly, "not flattery." Kola swallowed hard.
Mrs. Sterling stepped closer, guided by the maid. "I went out," she said softly, "and I stood on the road like someone forgotten. I asked for help. People passed me like air." Her voice remained controlled, but the hurt was there, hiding inside the calm. "And then," she said, turning her face toward Kola's direction, "I heard a young man stop." Kola's throat tightened. "I heard his voice, not pitying, not proud, just human." The chief looked at Kola again. "My wife came home and told me about you," he said. "She told me you helped her cross the road. She told me you bought her food. She told me you defended her when others shouted." Kola's mind flashed to the times his own hunger had been ignored. He felt something wet in his eyes. He forced it back. Chief Sterling sat down slowly, then gestured for Kola to sit too. Kola sat on the edge of the chair like a man who feared staining it with poverty. The chief leaned forward. "Tell me," he said, "why did you help her?" Kola stared at the floor. His voice came out small. "Because she asked," he said, "and because she is someone's mother." Mrs. Sterling smiled faintly. The chief's eyes narrowed. "That's all?" he asked. Kola hesitated. Then he spoke truth. "Sir, I am not rich. I don't have plenty, but I know what it feels like to be treated like you don't matter. I couldn't watch her stand there like she was invisible." Silence filled the room, the kind of silence that listens. Mrs. Sterling nodded slowly. The chief exhaled. Then he said something that surprised Kola. "My wife has been surrounded by servants, but starved of sincerity," the chief said. "People around wealth learn to perform. They greet you with their teeth, not their hearts. They help you because they want something." Kola sat still. Mrs. Sterling's voice came again. "When you helped me, Kola," she said, "you didn't know who I was. That is why it mattered." The chief turned slightly and called, "Bring it." A man entered carrying a small folder. The chief took it, placed it on the table, and pushed it toward Kola. Kola stared at it like a snake. "What is this, sir?" he asked. The chief's voice remained calm. "It is your appointment letter," he said. Kola blinked. "My appointment letter?" "Yes," the chief said. "That logistics company you interviewed for, Sterling Logistics, is my company." Kola's heart nearly stopped. He remembered the interview room, the measuring eyes, the quiet judgment. He remembered the waiting candidates with shiny shoes. Sterling Logistics. It had been him all along. The chief continued. "You were not selected," he bluntly said. Kola's chest collapsed. Then the chief added, "Not because you were unqualified." Kola looked up, confused. "The panel didn't choose you because they claimed you lacked presentation. They said you looked unpolished. They said you might not fit the brand image." Kola's face rose in heat. The humiliation of it burned like pepper. Then Mrs. Sterling spoke, her voice soft but sharp. "And yet," she said, "when I stood on the road unpolished, you treated me like I belonged to life." The chief's eyes hardened. "So I called the panel, and I asked them one question. What is the brand image of a company that cannot recognize character?" Kola's breath came unsteady. The chief leaned back. "My wife asked for one reward for you," he said. Kola's voice shook. "Sir, The chief lifted his hand. "Listen," he said. He tapped the folder. "This appointment letter is not for a small position. It is for a role directly under our operations manager." Kola's eyes widened. "But sir, I don't—" "You will learn," the chief said firmly. "We can train skill. We cannot train a clean heart." Kola's hands trembled as he opened the folder. The letter had his name. It had a salary figure that looked like a miracle. It had benefits. It had a starting date. Kola's vision blurred. He blinked fast, trying not to disgrace himself with tears in a rich man's sitting room. Mrs. Sterling smiled gently. "My son, this is not charity. This is justice for the kindness you showed when nobody was watching." Kola's voice broke.
"Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ma." But the chief wasn't finished. He leaned forward again, eyes sharp like a man who hated hypocrisy. "There is more," he said. Kola swallowed hard. The chief's tone became colder. "My wife told me something else," he said. "She told me that when people ignored her, some of them laughed, some insulted her, some even tried to push her away." Kola remembered the market crowd, the shouting, the cruelty that comes easily when people think no one important is present. The chief's jaw tightened. "I have been the richest man in this town," he said, "and yet I have been blind to the hearts of my people. My wife's test has opened my eyes." Kola sat quietly, sensing that this moment was bigger than him. The chief continued. "Tomorrow," he said, "my wife will attend a public charity meeting." Kola frowned slightly. The chief's eyes locked on him. "And you," he said, "will accompany her." Kola's mouth opened. "Sir?" Mrs. Sterling smiled. "I want the town to see what I saw. I want them to learn that dignity does not wear expensive cloth." Kola's heart raced again. "What will I do, Ma?" he asked. Mrs. Sterling's voice was gentle. "Just be yourself," she said. "Stand with me." Kola nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. Then the chief delivered the final blow of revelation. "And one more thing," he said. He stood up. "Mrs. Sterling will not go as a blind beggar tomorrow," he said. "She will go as the wife of the richest man in town." Kola's stomach tightened. He suddenly understood. The same people who ignored her, the same people who shouted, the same people who mocked, they were about to face the truth. And truth, when it arrives late, does not knock softly. The next day, the hall was full. Community leaders, market associations, religious heads, local government people, business owners, and many of the same faces from the street. Kola stood near the entrance, dressed neatly in clothes the Sterling house had provided. Simple, sharp, respectable. Mrs. Sterling entered beside him, guided, dignified, calm. Whispers rose. Wait, that's Mama Sterling. What is she doing here?" Then Chief Sterling entered behind them, and the entire hall stood like a wave. Respect filled the air, heavy and immediate. People bowed. People smiled too wide. People clapped like they had always loved her. Kola watched their faces change. He watched the sudden fear in eyes that had once been careless. Mrs. Sterling was led to the front. A microphone was placed. She stood, quiet, composed. Then she spoke. "My people," she began. Her voice carried across the hall, steady like a drumbeat. "For months I have been blind in eyes," she said, "but yesterday I became blind in heart." The hall went silent. She continued. "I wanted to know what it feels like to have nothing," she said, "so I went out dressed like someone forgotten." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Sterling's voice remained calm. "Many passed me. Many ignored me. Some insulted me." Kola saw one woman lower her head. One man stared at the floor. Mrs. Sterling turned her head slightly, as if addressing a specific corner. "But one young man stopped," she said. "He guided me through traffic. He fed me. He defended me, not knowing who I was." She lifted her hand gently toward Kola. "Kola." Kola stepped forward, heart pounding. Eyes turned. People stared at him like he was suddenly a story. Mrs. Sterling continued. "This young man reminded me that kindness is not about who deserves it. It is about who you choose to be." The hall remained silent. Then Chief Sterling stepped forward. His voice was firm. "From today," he declared, "Sterling Foundation will begin a town-wide initiative to support the blind, the disabled, and the forgotten, not with pity, with dignity." Applause erupted.
some genuine, some forced, some fearful. Then he looked at the crowd, eyes sharp. "And let me say this," he added, "anyone who mistreats the vulnerable in this town will answer to me." That sentence landed like thunder. People nodded quickly.
People swallowed. People suddenly remembered manners. After the event, as guests filed out, many people approached Kola. Some tried to greet him warmly as if they had always known him. Some offered business cards. Some laughed too loudly. But Kola saw through it. He remembered the market. He remembered the road. He remembered how quickly respect appears when wealth is nearby. Mrs. Stalin, still calm, turned toward him as they prepared to leave. "My son," she said softly, "you did not help me because of my name." Kola shook his head. "No, ma." She nodded. "Then do not allow my name to change you," she said. "Let your heart remain the same." Kola felt a deep weight in his chest, a responsibility bigger than salary. "Ma," he asked quietly, "why did you choose to test people like that?" Mrs. Stelling's lips pressed together gently. "Because," she said, "I wanted to remind the town that the poor are not less human." She paused. "And because I wanted to remind my husband that wealth is not proof of wisdom." Chief Stalin heard that and smiled faintly, the smile of a man who had been corrected by truth and accepted it. That night, when Kola returned to his room, still small, still humble, but now filled with a new future, he sat on his mattress and stared at the appointment letter again. He thought of the road, he thought of the empty bowl, he thought of the voices that told him to ignore her. He realized something that hit him quietly, but deeply. Destiny does not always arrive in fine clothes. Sometimes destiny arrives in torn wrapper and trembling hands to test the heart that claims it wants a better life. And Kola understood that his real interview had not been in the company building. His real interview had been on the roadside. And he had passed, not because he was smart, not because he was perfect, but because he chose to be human when nobody was watching. He closed his eyes and whispered a small prayer, not for more money, not for bigger connections, but for a heart that would not rot when blessings began to grow. Because in this world, success can change a man faster than failure can. And that is why the elders say, the hand that lifts the forgotten may be lifting its own destiny, and the eyes that see the poor as human will never walk blind into regret.
If you believe stories should still teach wisdom in this generation, subscribe, like, share, and drop your thought on this story. Let's keep the conversation going, because these lessons are disappearing.